Good morning, OpenSlava. Welcome back to the third half day. It's morning. We had the previous days in the afternoon, at least if you're in Europe on the Central Eastern time. This time it's morning. You can probably see it at my face. I'm not wearing any makeup, so it's just raw me. I'm not a morning person. I'm still pumped. No excuses. Got to get up, get the coffee. Got it right here. So I'm totally prepped. I hope you're also enjoying your coffee or your latte or your smoothie, whatever you do in the morning. If you want to share it with me, hashtag OpenSlava at OpenSlava to see what you're having for breakfast. Maybe just rushed in, got the kids to school, and you're sitting now at the office or at home ready for the third. It's going to be a short one, but the third day of OpenSlava, the first virtual conference of OpenSlava. And I'm excited. Again, let's see. We got some people coming in with the chat. I always want to check if people hear me okay, if you see me okay, if everything's smooth on your end. Also, if you're watching the live stream on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook, just know every speaker is a different stream. So if you get cut off after a stream, it's just because you have to go to the next speaker. And if you want to join the conversation, you want to join in the chat, ask speakers questions, go to the Hop-In platform. How do you get there? Go to openslava.sk. And there you have this big link. You can just jump in and you can join the conversations, be in the polls, ask the speakers, connect with me, and do your thing. So if I look at the chat, we have Martin. Good morning. If I'm not mistaken, you have been here for 3 days. Try to pronounce the other name, Juraj. Oh, we have Peter. Nice. Was connecting with Peter on Instagram yesterday. Really nice guy. Thank you for letting me know that everything is all smooth. And good morning to you if you're somewhere else in the world, because in the last days we had Singapore, we had Tunisia, we had names of countries, and I thought I knew my world map that I haven't even heard of, people checking in. So if it's evening to you, if it's the afternoon, also a good day to you. And even next speaker who will come up next is presenting at midnight, somewhere between her sleep. She's pumped, but somewhere between her sleep. So that's the effort people are putting into OpenSlava just to make sure that they're presenting at midnight. So I'm not going to make the introduction too long to make sure that once she jumps into my backstage in her PJs, who knows, she can start her presentation and we'll get the show on the road. So cool. Everybody's getting up. Yep. I've seen that I'm pronouncing things right. People are giving me phonetics. So that's good. Yep. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Like I said, hashtag OpenSlava, the third day, short one. Thank you. Afterwards, we'll also have a survey for the people that have been in the 3 days Hop-In platform. You'll get a survey and you're like, oh, another survey. Here we go. But it's really important. Like I said, every year, the survey is just about how did you like it? Real quick. How did you like the speakers, the flow? Definitely in this first virtual one. Did you like OpenSlava? What could we improve? What shouldn't we have? And that's really useful because as I experience OpenSlava every year, and this is the 4th year for me, I see it improving every time, even in digital, stepping up their game using this survey. So if you really want something improved or you want something that we keep because it's really good, then let us know in that survey that we will get after this last day at OpenSlava. If I'm looking to the right, that's normal. That's just where my chat is, where I can connect with you, and I will see the applause emojis. If there's anything else, let me see right here. First speaker. Yes. Okay. Oh, by the way, a good one. That was really great. An important one. We also mentioned it yesterday, but it's coming closer. At 1 p.m. we will have the workshop of Stephanie. For the people that joined yesterday, Stephanie is the UX design guru that gave a great presentation, and she's having a workshop at 1 p.m. if I'm not mistaken, and we'll probably also put that in the chat. So you can click there. I think they're even gonna, not sure, but I think they're even gonna put the Zoom link directly so you can just, because it's almost 1 p.m., you can just join in and go all UX all over the place with Stephanie. So if you want to do that, just check the chat. It will pop up in a second. Like I said, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, join in on the Hop-In platform. And we're gonna have a lot of speakers. We're gonna have different topics today. So there's only one thing left to say, and that's say, let there be change.
Change is all around us, shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
Okay, we're back. We're back. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you like change because as my first manager at my previous jobs before I started my own company said, Marnik, the only constant is change. So let there be change, positive change, using technology for humans, for society, for the climate, for everything we're doing. And we saw a lot of great examples. So you can also make that impact in your own profession if you're business focused or tech focused. Now, yesterday, if I'm looking, and I think it was Peter. Peter was also in the chat. He asked me like, Marnik, I didn't see everything yet. So could you like give me tomorrow a wrap up of the things I missed because you're like this tech guru. And I'm like, no problem. So I just wrote down also for the people that are like, I just tuned in. This is my third day. I missed day 1 and 2. I'll just give you a quick wrap up of what I remembered. And let's see if it helps you. You can also watch the live streams, the replays on Facebook and YouTube on the OpenSlava platforms. But for me, what I remember is that you want to limit the data peaks with your Lambda by just putting it into Kubernetes or OpenShift. You can choose. And you can have it run on a Linux server. Or if you're feeling lucky, you can go serverless. Now, then you just put a Flexbox UX design over it with some PPC security, which we all do. But make sure you do it in an agile way or you will drown in your waterfall. Now combine that with some adaptive components and containers that will have to be processed through the quantum computer, making sure the Spring Cloud stays in front of the sun. That will give you an edge, a responsive architecture with minimal legacy and a solid industrial IoT environment. I hope that's clear. If you have any questions about this, just let me know at Marnik Vandenbroek. I'm also looking at Peter. I hope that wraps up the day you missed or the pieces that you missed. Okay. Checking my backstage here. If we get our first speaker, like I said, she's going to speak. And when I'm looking down, I'm looking at my backstage. When I'm looking at the right, I'm looking at my chat. And we're trying to get her in. So the moment she pops up, we're going to talk about 2D, 3D. Looking at the chat, I'm seeing that Stephanie's workshop is online. So if you click that, you can join at 1 p.m. to the UX design. That is all going good. I'm also sometimes staring at this for the people that just joined in for the Thursday. I get a 13-second delay, so I see if everything's going smooth. Already a small intro because I can get her on the road to the first speaker opening the third day of OpenSlava. She is, and I'm going to try to pronounce it right. I haven't spoken to her yet, so I hope this is okay. But our first speaker is going to be Ahiri Stanford Asio. She can tell me if I mess this up. But she's a software engineer for Microsoft. And the cool thing is she's an ex-senior JavaScript engineer of Accenture, and she's just joining. She's already smiling. So either she's smiling like I pronounced her name completely wrong, or she's just happy to be here. But good that you are. So maybe I could just do this again. I'm looking at Peter. Peter really loves the review that I gave of the day. I hear you're ready to go, so I'll do the introduction, and then if you do a thumbs up for me, they can't see it. I'll just give you the floor if that's okay. So, she's nodding. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Ahiri Stanford Asio. She's a software engineer at Microsoft. She's ex-senior JavaScript engineer of Accenture, where she's active in the Liquid Studio in Silicon Valley, and she's the ex-chief, which is really cool, the ex-chief of Mission Control Security at the National Reconnaissance Office, responsible for sensitive global satellite operations. So combine that with her knowledge, 2D, 3D, the technology, the HoloLens, and having that background in these satellites, either you're working with James Bond or you're an Avenger, something like that. It's got to be something like this. So great background. You're currently working on next-gen holographic computing solutions for the workplace with an app called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Guides, which the audience, of course, will know. And it's just basically, as I understand it, because you know me, I don't have a tech background, so you're going to say a lot of stuff that I don't understand. Holographic experience in training environments so people can use the HoloLens and train better. Now, in short, you call that rethinking, it's a whole mouthful. You call that rethinking accessibility from 2D to 3D. So I would say, glad you're here. I know it's midnight somewhere. You're probably tired. You're ready to go to sleep, but you look pumped. So I'm really happy to have you. The virtual floor is yours. Have fun.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful, warm welcome. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get popping. There may be some screen inception going on at first, and here we are in 2020, the world of technology. Beautiful, so I think we're all set. And I'm getting a different screen than you all are, isn't it?
We're currently seeing you.
All right, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to share a little bit differently.
All right. Now something
There we
happened.
go. Beautiful.
There you go.
Okay. Good morning. And Dos Verano, it is midnight here in Vancouver, Canada. But I seem to be on the other side of the planet as far as sunshine. Thank you for that awesome introduction. My name is Harry Stanford CEO, and I work as a software engineer for Microsoft here in normally sunny but often also rainy Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. I want to thank OpenSlava for welcoming me. And I also want to give a great shout out to the organizers of the conference. Being an Accenture alum has made me feel quite close to this conference, so it's sort of a nice moment to come back. So in 2018, I joined Microsoft's Mixed Reality at Work team. And that was in order to build what we're now calling Dynamics 365 Guides. It is a mixed reality application, which is a training platform for the HoloLens, which I show a photo of myself wearing. Let's see if that actually will happen. And the photos, and we are advancing. We're advancing. It's happening. Beautiful. Prior to that, I was a senior JavaScript engineer at the Accenture Liquid Studio, hence the liquid to your left. And that was in Silicon Valley, where we were introducing emerging technologies to typically Fortune 500 businesses. You all know the game. It's a beautiful game. And I'm really delighted to return and participate in this conference, which itself is a brainchild of a highly influential mentor of mine, Pavel Tsorod. I was inspired to enter the engineering world after an 8-year-long career as a civil servant at the US CIA, where I also served in a rotational role at the National Reconnaissance Office, where I was essentially protecting a pretty dazzling array of technical innovations as they were developed and deployed for operational uses. But I really longed, even within that intelligence environment, to work in a world where the opportunities for emerging technologies and emerging tech could be leveraged for empowering more people and increasing their quality of life, perhaps even where emerging tech and open source could meet, like they do at OpenSlava. So what in the world is Dynamics 365 Guides, really? Well, essentially, Guides is a mixed reality tool that allows employees to learn by doing, using interactive instructions. It lets operators of these guides learn during the flow of work by providing them holographic instructions when and where they need them in context. But as usual, a picture can speak 1,000 words. Since I've been working at Microsoft, I've learned that more than 1 billion people, or 15% of the global population, live with a disability. And that number is expected to double before 2050. Because of that, I have become, within the last 2 years, my team's technical accessibility champion. And so as part of my engineering work, each day, I bring that perspective with me to work. During the planning, the development, the building of the 2 components of the Guides application. Sorry about that. Let's advance to the next slide. The one that sits in the 3D environment for PC, I'm sorry, the one that sits in the 2D environment for PC. So let's recontextualize here. There are truly 2 parts of the Dynamics 365 application, the Guides application. The one that sits in a 2D environment for PC and that lets our users easily create a structure for their guides, to add steps, to add images, to add videos, and finally to add 3D holograms. And the second, which for our users sits in the 3D world on HoloLens and allows them to place those 3D parts in space as guide authors. And finally, there's a handoff that takes place, still in the 3D world, to an operator of the guide. As an accessibility champion, the first part, the one for 2-dimensional devices and screens, that job is relatively simple. Basic accessibility standards and practices are pretty well defined in the 2D world. The World Wide Web Consortium, or the 3WC, provides standards for accessibility that are internationally recognized by governments and by businesses. The most well-known of them is the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is also known as ISO 40500, and was also adopted into the European standard, EN 301-549. Although those standards arose for and were inspired by the internet, the strategies apply to mobile and desktop environments and 2D surfaces all in between. The 3WC also provides guidelines that are specifically for code editors, for media players, for content management systems, and for other software. So what do those 2D standards truly tell us? Well, they tell us that our applications need to be perceivable. They need to provide captions like the ones that you're seeing right now, or other alternatives when we add multimedia. They need to provide text alternatives for non-text content. They need to give the user control over the speed of that media. They need to present content in different ways. They also need to be operable. All functionality needs to be available from a keyboard. They need to provide users enough time to read and use content that's presented, and provide ways to help users to navigate, find, and determine the location of their own location in the UI to determine where they are. They also need to be understandable to make text readable, and they need to help users avoid common mistakes and correct them. They need to ensure that content appears in a predictable way. And finally, Our applications in 2D have to be robust, meaning they need to maximize compatibility so that the content can be readable by a wide variety of tools, including assistive technologies. Typically, the very bones of our user interface, the front-end code, is used to address those things. The markup code, typically the HTML, CSS, your front end. So it's translated. Your HTML, for instance, is translated into objects in what's called the UIA tree, the User Interface Automation Tree. An automation tree that provides assistive technologies, the ability to give a user a tailored experience. So accessibility in 2D is typically implemented through manipulating the markup code. For HTML, ARIA attributes. For XAML, automation properties. We also know that semantic markup is more accessible for the experiences of these users. In fact, it was exactly this kind of semantic approach that influenced the current syntax of HTML. These days, when we're creating HTML code, we use navs, headers, and footers, rather than divs or spans. In fact, in 2014, this became the official W3C recommendation, because using semantic elements like nav, header, footer, and audio or video to replace the general element object actually notified all assistive technologies exactly what to expect. So the influence of the accessibility ecosystem on the markup language that we use today is often taken for granted. So let's look at some examples of 2D accessibility in Guides PC. But wait. First, I want to clear up a very common misconception. When we're talking about accessibility, we can't see all users who require assistive technologies as a monolith. About 10% of people with a visual disability have lost all ability to see. In the pie chart that I show above, that 10% is represented by an orange slice. And these users have lost 100% of their vision. But now look at the remaining pie, which is in blue. It represents the other 90% of individuals with visual impairments. These individuals still, to some extent, perceive light and shape. And the same goes for any motor, sensory, or cognitive disability. When we talk about disabilities, it's important to recognize that individuals have experiences on a wide spectrum. You might have noticed my selection of an orange slice to represent that 10%. And this brings us to a topic that 8% of men experience, and a total of about 200 million people worldwide, which is colorblindness, a form of visual impairment. I used an orange slice and a blue pie because for users who would see, as we would on the left here, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, the shades orange and blue will consistently look very different from one another. Here we are at a key principle of web accessibility. Users with color blindness need to be able to perceive the difference between certain color combinations. Let's get back to it. and see an example of 2D accessibility in the Guides PC application. So here, a user is on a page where they have the ability to choose between 3 different choices. The implications of selecting each choice is indicated using an icon or a small dash. And as you might expect, a seeing user who lands on this page of our application might check each of the column-row intersections to make some conclusions about the implications of their selection. To do this, they're perceiving shape, they're perceiving color, and they're perceiving positions of icons in this case. But what about a user who has a different experience? Let's take a moment and see how such a user would use an assistive technology, in this case, a narrator screen reader, to see the information at these intersections and make a choice. So using HTML, markup code, and in this case, XAML, we simply can set a property to the text which should be spoken for the logic that a seeing user would conclude from these images and icons. And when we set those properties, they appear in the user interface automation tree. So any assistive tool can transmit it to the user the way that the user needs it. In addition to having some pretty well-defined standards for the 2D world, we also have the ability to choose some tools to verify whether or not our work meets the target accessibility standards that we want it to. We can use tools like the Website Accessibility Checker, the Accessibility Insights tool. This one scans HTML content for compliance and basically produces a report on known problems, likely problems, potential problems, and even links to how to address them. The list goes on in terms of just how many tools are available in the open source world to validate things like your contrast between the text and its background, your selection of colors, your tabbing order. These checkers work by climbing up and down the UIA tree, just like the screen reader that we just listened to. Not only that, but they track us while we interact with the keyboard focusable elements, alerting us of bugs, and also, as I mentioned, allow us to analyze colors in real time, as well as contrast ratios, and raise bugs there as well. In the 3D world, though, there is no UIA tree, and it has no parallel. There is no semantic backbone for tools like Unity to create and set properties that automation devices can simply plug into. In 3D environments, we're creating with the assistance of light. But for augmented reality situations, We also deal with variable lighting conditions. Environmental conditions will always impact our experience of holograms and digital interfaces. Particularly when those holograms are text, we begin to very quickly run the risk of allowing an overexposure or underexposure. But the reality is that the variable nature of 3D environments is exactly where the opportunities for 3D devices lays. Humans are constrained by our senses. Seeing, hearing, touching. Indeed, each of us is locked into a very limited experience of a vast array of signals that are persistently available in our environments, but are imperceptible by us. Augmenting devices, by nature, give us the ability to perceive the unperceivable. The colorblind users who we mentioned moments ago might have conditions that reduce their sensitivity to the color red or the color green, which are actually simply wavelengths of light within the electromagnetic spectrum. Similarly, all humans are drastically limited because of our insensitivity to a wide range of the electromagnetic spectrum. But augmenting devices can assist us with this. Let's consider the example of sound. What we know about sound is that it's simply our brain's interpretation of vibration. We can already impact and adjust that to impact our users' hearing. The audio team at Facebook Reality Labs Research is just one of the teams that's working to refine 2 experiences that help users hear better in noisy environments using augmenting glasses and devices. We know that we can enhance spatial sound, and we can also enhance that sound's acuity. What if you could turn up the volume on the person sitting across from you and simultaneously turn down the volume of unwanted background noises and individuals? How can we fine-tune a virtual sound with such high fidelity that it is completely indistinguishable from a real-world source? These are the questions that we've already asked and have begun to answer. Here's a video of a prototype where we use sound to increase the usability of the user's workflow and guides.
I'm jumping in real quick. What were we supposed to hear sound in this video? Because I don't think it's transmitting.
Oh Oh, there's no sound. Oh, what a bummer is that. My system sound perhaps wasn't shared when I originally shared, and I'm just going to see whether it's possible if I can stop my share and restart it in case that was actually the issue.
Okay. Because I think with the other videos, but also people were asking, I thought like this is probably part of the presentation, but here you literally said sound, and that's why I'm jumping in.
Thank you for jumping in, and let's see if perhaps, and I don't see the opportunity to share sound specifically from my system.
Okay.
All right. Unless you have any recommendations on tech here, I think we'll have to move on.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
And hopefully I am sharing here. I don't know if I hit the key. So essentially what we have there is a completely internationalized, in-context, spoken guide, where a user can both see a 3D hologram in real time, in real space, listen to the steps that need to be taken one by one, keep their hands in context and in place where the work is needed, and change steps one to the next, as you may have noticed, using their voice. This helps users with perfect vision. It helps audio learners. It helps individuals with text processing challenges like dyslexia. It helps people who have poor or impaired eyesight. But it is simply a more natural workflow. It's the way that most of us would learn from a mentor, talking over our shoulders or showing something to us in real time. And it becomes more natural precisely because of what it does not require us to do, which is leave the context of our work to attend to the needs of the technology. So, in moving forward, we have to look for opportunities to unlock these workflows, not just for a small slice of our users, but for users across the ability spectrum. We all have an opportunity here in emerging technologies to let the device do the heavy lifting and let the user get on with their work. I do want to take a moment to invite all of you. There is, first I do want to thank everyone for your patience with the technical difficulties. And I also want to underscore a moment in time that we have entered that I'm very proud to be a part of at Microsoft, in that I have the ability to focus energy around enabling a wider and wider spectrum of users, and that Microsoft has begun now 10 years into its inaugural Ability Conference to open this process up to organizations around the world. It's decided to share its roadmap towards making technologies like what you're seeing more accessible to all. So I invite you at this point to check out some of the resources that are available out there for doing that. If your organization doesn't have a plan for approaching accessibility with its product, consider looking at those documents for inspiration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ahiri. Thank you so much for the presentation. No problem with the tech. I know it's probably more fun if we heard the sound, but I think we got the message loud and clear. And also, I was so impressed. You're saying like, oh, the tech wasn't working, but you subtitled your whole presentation. I'm already proud if I subtitle my YouTube videos. So let that be also a win. And we don't have time for questions anymore because the next speaker is already there. But what I remember is that in the near future, or already now, I can mute certain people in a training or in a meeting. That is bliss. That's all we need to know. You could just do one slide. You can mute people that you want to mute. So that's
Perfect.
good. I want to thank you probably can't see it in the Hop-In platform, but the claps are coming in. This is digital claps, people saying yay. So I'm just going to share it with you. It's always fun as a speaker to know that people are enjoying it and that they're applauding you virtually. So I want to thank you again. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a good continuous night, and hope to see you physically in the near future if that's possible.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great conference.
Thank you very much. See ya. Bye-bye. All right. Our next speaker's already in the backstage. You can't see him, but he's there. He's pumped. If I'm not mistaken, he's calling in from Italy. He's nodding, so that's good. I met him before. Next speaker, I met him before, and it's really cool that we're going to talk because people are already asking in the chat, when is the Fjord event starting? Well, if you're coming for the Fjord talk, well, this is going to happen right now. And the cool thing is we just talked about all the accessibility, the 2D, the 3D, and let's now take a look at what's happening right now and the future and walk around with our heads in the clouds.
Across any industry, we know the best way to move you to the cloud. Come with us and watch new life come to your business.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. We get our heads in the clouds. We're dreaming of the future, the trends, what is coming up, what we are doing. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the next speaker because, like I said, people are waiting for the Fjords event. Not to put pressure on you, Ashley, but they're waiting for it. They're pumped. They want to hear it.
Sounds good.
Okay. There you go. So next speaker is, I'm just going to call you the big chief of the Milan studio of Fjord. Design and innovation from Accenture Interactive, 20 years global experience. And you're all about inventing, I think there's a really nice sentence, inventing the future at the intersection of design, innovation, and brand communication. If you walk into a boardroom like that and you say that, you're going to get all the money in the world. We met before, I don't know if you remember, in the Prague event. I think it was last year.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. I left some sort of impression. I really loved it. You also gave me a Fjord Trends Report book. I read it completely on the plane and then gave it to my wife. True story. And she also enjoyed it. It was beautifully designed. It was really simply explained on what the opportunities were across the industry. You're going to talk today. It's very simple. Fjord Trends 2020, the COVID edition, because you have a trends report and then something happens that nobody can predict. COVID hits, the world changes, but there's still so much opportunity out there, so many trends that are changing, people reinventing themselves and their businesses. That's what you're going to talk about. So, Ashley, take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the energizing intro there, and hello to everyone who is obviously kind of tuning into this morning. And as you said, yes, a look a bit of how things are changing every year. For the last 13 years as Fjord, we've been putting together, and let me start sharing my screen, but we've been, compiling really signals that we're seeing. So trends, not that are far away in a distant, but signals from what is happening and changing now. And they get compiled around this time of the year. Across about 33 studios around the world. So we're looking at those kind of commonalities that could be coming to life in the next 12 months or so. So, head in the clouds, but, feet well on a changing ground at the moment in understanding how we use these. And these trends are also not just wanting to be theory, they're very much tools that we apply in practice. So in projects, we have activities like trends reframing, where they give us then, if you want, parameters and against which to measure what we're doing. And as you'll also see in this deck, we always look to try and make it actionable. So give elements of what to be, thinking or doing around. But of course, January, these came out, and 2 months later, as you said, I'm speaking from Milan. So we were unfortunately early adopters for once, and have now been, sitting at home speaking since then. So COVID came along and has really, changed things dramatically. You have a global crisis, which unfortunately is still unfolding. If we look at Europe, our curves are starting to, have an uptake. But this has, had lasting impact now beyond us getting out of a COVID crisis. Those impacts are profound. We're seeing them on the change, for just to give one example, on how we're changing our way of, working from home or not in the office, and how that will remain to a certain extent, and how that's then redesigning our cities. But essentially, we always have a meta trend at the start, something that we look to be able to connect and bring all the dots together. And this was realigning the fundamentals. And this, as I said, was again before COVID. So, we saw climate change happening at a faster pace, more people being conscious of this happening. There's been rising inequality, big tech, a lot of, elements that point to crisis. And as it says here, of course, not wanting to paint a gloomy picture, because these moments are moments also of reinvention. And what is needed is to really be embracing a long-term view, and how that impacts, if you want, on the world and society at large. We have 7 trends we're going to touch on today. So without talking you through the titles, we can dive right in. And the first here was called The Many Faces of Growth. And this was seeing how corporate transformation, which has been driven by, digital in these last few years, has started to switch to purpose. And in that sense, it's saying, how do we look beyond, say, financial metrics to be able to measure the success, the pleasure of that we are doing, the learning that comes from that. And of course, this realigning, this many faces of growth with COVID has come again under something that has had a faster impact. We started judging organizations and individuals really based on their response. And this is still occurring now. We look at not only companies, we look at our governments and how they have reacted or not to elements. So there's this big shift there, and it's been very practical in times, like when back during the lockdown, there were companies that, changed their production lines to be, if they're larger things, creating ventilators, or smaller companies like in Italy that were producing grappa, started making hand sanitizers. And of course, then, on the opposite side, we're seeing rise in unemployment, which is really spiking. So there's big considerations really for companies that are also at the same time needing to balance their balance sheets and make that happen. Because we were really seeing this idea of, capitalism in a way needing to rethink itself. And this is coming, as you can see here, from, for example, the Financial Times. And it's saying, business must make a profit, of course, but it should serve a purpose too. Or a quote from, CEO of Salesforce around bringing a new form that is more sustainable, and where businesses are maybe not just looking at their shareholders, but at their wider stakeholders. And, there's intents being signed, groups of companies, including Accenture, that are subscribing to these ideas, just like to sustainability programs. We've just announced our kind of zero emissions by 2025. And we're seeing a change really in how we think of growth. And again, I think this has even been accelerated by COVID, but a lot of the darlings of the digital world, Uber, think of WeWork, Peloton, as they went into IPOs, they no longer seem to have that simple strength that they were driving previous IPOs from big brands. And then, on the other side, as this came under attack, we saw things like, countries like New Zealand unveiling a well-being budget that was, yes, looking at economic growth, so, GDP elements, but also what makes it a great place to live, and how do you drive life? And interestingly, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, just in the last few weeks, has been, talking, possibility of a 4-week working day. and how that can change. And there's been experiments happening there. Microsoft, who were just on, but in Japan, run a pilot on a 4-day week, and they actually saw their production increase as their working hours went down. So we're saying it's a time to really examine, we're seeing in this moment of crisis, all the beliefs that we hold, and also a way of giving meaning and metrics. So adding to those economic models, it can be learning, it can be happiness, it can be your communal longevity. And of course, for businesses, it's the challenge, and it's not an indifferent challenge, is, as I said, finding, if you want, these purposeful objectives, while of course maintaining profit and a healthy business to allow that purpose to take place. I was saying, it's time, how will you rethink your customer experience, but also your employee experience, and how do they can kind of work together to create value. And, COVID here, in having made work remote again, how does new value come out on that side? And if we go on to the second, it's called money changes. And then here it was really looking at all the signals coming at different speeds from different countries, really, on how money is changing. So it's moving from being something physical, something tangible that you hold in your hands, to more and more being zeros and ones. So a file, a digital file. And what does that mean? What does that implicate? And again, COVID gave a big acceleration to this, especially during that initial lockdown period, when, money was seen, physical money was seen as being contagious. So there was a big push, even from people that didn't, to actually go towards using digital tools, preferably contactless. I see it in my little stores here in Milan. Before, they would have always wanted cash. That change happened. And just reading a couple of days ago in Wired UK, there was an article called "The Pandemic Has Killed Cash." And there was an interesting statistic in that, where it's saying that during the pandemic in the UK, 9,000 ATMs have been disconnected from the network. So not only money disappearing, physical money, but also the network that was allowing that to happen. And so what is taking, its place is, of course, in Primis, we're seeing, a new form of fintechs and digital attackers. From in the top right, Monese, which is allowing you, if you're thinking to run, euros and maybe pounds sterling accounts. So for Europeans to manage cross-border life, to start, but also to players like Apple or Google moving into that financial space. And a quote here from Sweden, where only 13% seem to remember using cash for a purchase. So this new mental model, as we also mean, going to digital, into crypto, potentially into cryptocurrencies, is how does that change our way of thinking of money? So this mental model becomes, as I said, from something physical to a file. And if you want, think of it like back in the days of when we went from what could have been a vinyl piece of music that all it had on it was the music, to 20, 30 years later, as we have, our music on MP3, stuff on Spotify, it carries a whole more information than simply the music that it is there. So within, this space, it's like going, how can you then really start thinking of money transactions in a different way? You kind of think it's saying, if every payment carries information about you or your customers, what would that be? So if you're a railway and I'm a student and I go and buy my ticket, maybe it recognizes my being a student and I have automatically my discount that is entailed, as a banal example. But putting information in cash, again, can really open up a whole series of services, and that don't necessarily need to come from the financial services world. And this change in managing our cash, biometrics start playing more and more of a role, takes us to this third trend, which is called walking barcodes. And essentially how, both with kind of 5G now being rolled out, so we have more data that can flow more rapidly. This is, this faster data connection really and tools that get disseminated, digital tools in physical environment, are making more and more possible this kind of facial and body recognition. And in fact, going back to payments, Alibaba in China, which is kind of the equivalent of Amazon in some of its stores, you can pay by a smile as it recognizes you. So, and again, what happens with COVID? Where is the lens there? We've been looking at how we can monitor, that digital barcode. How can we keep, track and trace here? And it's worked better in some countries as others. UK recently had a big scandal around Excel being used as a database, but we're seeing this rise across countries on how we can be using our ways of then kind of minimizing pandemic that is happening. And of course, within this, what we need to do as always is balance those privacy issues with the benefit ones. So how do we ensure that there is trust in who is using these services, but again, can put us in that beneficial place of having that information that can be shared, that can help us contrast things like pandemics, but not only that, a whole series of improvements. Because if you want, we're moving towards what we could call the body as our signature. Both the digital tools we interact with, if we think of, Alexa and its voice control, it's getting smaller and smaller, as you can see by here. It becomes jewelry. It's wearing as a ring. Or in pre-pandemic times when we were still flying, places like Gatwick were introducing, but also Linate in Milan, pre-flight facial recognition, ID tests. So really, we're moving from, we've been talking of Internet of Things in these last few years. More and more, we're seeing also a new world of Internet of Bodies, and how, living services, so services that can respond to us, that understand us, are going from a digital world into that physical one. And key to this change is learning, if you want, from data mistakes that were made in digital world. Because as you can imagine, one thing is if someone hacks my email account, okay, I have to change my password. If my fingerprint gets hacked somehow, that's a lot more difficult for me to kind of go in and replace. So again, there's an element of data minimalism, which, if you've heard past trends, we have spoken about. And again, that strong element of consent that needs to come in to this. Again, to the left, if we then think, it is also, again, opening up a whole world of services that can be unlocked by biometrics. We have even here element of facial recognition. So perhaps if you're calling an emergency, it recognizes that there is that urgency in your voice, and it can help then put your call through a lot faster. And in this changing, as we walk around as walking barcodes, we're all dissolving in a way, and into what we're calling for this year kind of liquid people, where, what does it mean? We all wear a series of hats in our lives. We have our professional life as an employee. We are consumers in what we go out and we buy and we use. We are parents. We can be educators. We can be, sons and daughters of people. But all these identities somehow have, again, come into discussion. And COVID, once again, through a moment of lockdown, has accelerated or exacerbated this. So it has both seen behavior change. Here is mentioned, hand washing, working from home, or old habits like that toilet paper hoarding at the start of lockdown, which was very bizarre. But it continues now between who wears masks and who doesn't, and how do we confront different things. And it made us rethink priorities, what was important or not. So, and this again said it put itself into an existing trend, really, of reevaluating elements around us. So a rising consciousness of climate change took to these new, to consumption. And here an example comes from Sweden, where this word flickskam came into being, of people saying, no, you should be, embarrassed of flying because of its impact on the climate. And as you can see, it has very, let's say, tangible repercussions in a business world. There was 8% fall, this is said pre-COVID statistics in airport passengers, and wow, 2 million extra on trains. So whole ecosystems that get redesigned this way. And in this world of liquid people, even things like the Impossible Burger, which is this new generation of non-meat burgers, is not actually eaten just by, vegans or vegetarians, but 95% of people buying them in the US are meat eaters, and they've shifted to something. Or we're seeing in the top right, the first gender fluid dolly arriving from a big producer like Mattel, or a change in work that is taking more and more to freelancing. So here, we think that this kind of COVID-19 has accelerated what purpose means and what is that personal element to it, creating more anxiety and ethical ones. It's even health anxiety in these moments, and not to think of it necessarily as a generational shift. This is not coming just from young people. It's something that you can see in people in their 60s, like in people that are middle-aged or in teens. So it's going, how do you then think, if you're a company or designed to help your brand define people beyond what they consume or how they work? And how, so as I said, think of people more roundly. This in the middle where it says strike the word consumer from your vocabulary. Well, we're saying it's not an easy thing to do. It's a change in mindset and thinking wider in who we are. And the fifth one, as we go on, is called designing intelligence. It takes us back to the tools we use. And of course, artificial intelligence has now been with us in especially automizing activities for a few years. And it's been playing a key role post-pandemic, both in helping us, if you want, kind of provide ideas of how this can evolve. So predictions and forecasting on how an epidemic can spread. But very importantly, and we see the whole series of vaccines that are currently under testing across a variety of countries that are, strongly supported by AI research that is allowing to really crunch through that kind of, protein structures, etc. So then there's seen from what has been, as I said, that embedding of an AI that has disappeared into our background. So Google Lens, that I can look at a flower and it can tell me what it is, or my skincare products that are being designed by an AI to be fully fitted to the kind of skin type that I have, are sitting there in the background. But what we're seeing happening now is actually this kind of move to a new stage for AI that moves from automation to value creation, and essentially helps us navigate times that are becoming, increasingly complex. So seeing AI tools being used in boardrooms at the moment, or as tools for CEOs there to be making decisions that can augment what we can as humans. Or we're seeing AI being, adopted to actual design practice. Those seats that you see down there in the left corner is a collaboration between Philip Stark and then an algorithm. And then we have things like AlphaStar that are pushing the boundaries through gaming here, but in actually helping solve kind of problems when there is incomplete information. And this, again, would be a big step forward to kind of challenge those real business challenges. So we have highlighted, if you want, 3 areas where we see that a systemic and new approach to AI that can help, how can we say, unleash and unlock full potential human creation. Of these, one is this enhancing the human experience by extending our perceptual abilities. Second is, how do you empower people in complex systems, especially in global organizations? And, then how can we envision new products and services that we can prototype, we want, through simulation and support in that decision making. So, again, a lot of thought here really, as I said, is what role AI and how that can help as I said, not just in automizing individual tasks, but providing more strategic making decision. And as I said, and in even in enhancing and augmenting us, both as organizations and people, because that kind of takes us on to the sixth trend here, which is, digital doubles, and how more and more we are becoming, our personas have a life of their own online. And of course, we already exist in a way through the things that we post on Instagram, that we leave on social media, but here it's starting to take, more of nearly a 3D form. And of course, these digital doubles now have been accelerated, or this adoption of needing avatars of some sort online, even by people who were resistant before, again, driven by remote working, by lockdowns, of actually learning to use these tools, or to be taking a lot of their medical resources online. And these twins, and as we've also told in previous years in trends when we were looking like at synthetic realities, is the possibility really of having 3D and data models of physical objects. These are both people, but we can also think of products with digital doubles. A lot of the work we have been doing this year has been creating virtual experiences that provided this second life of sorts for 2020. And of course, if we're looking on that can take, just like people, our digital double also has, a soul, and that soul is made up of our data. So key to this in being able to express ourselves more through avatars is online, is where does our data reside, and how do we control that, so that what we can then grow, if you want, even through AI, our assistants that can help us automize on certain elements. So these digital doubles can rewrite data ownership models, and this is something, and it's really here a critical question, as often, like we go back to the cache earlier, is who do I trust to host my digital double? So again, for most organizations here, there's kind of key considerations on how you can be designing and helping build trust on what you're doing. So again, I said here, it's thinking, if you think through what categories of interactions, we could be opening up by digital doubles. That it could be delegating tasks for you. So the more mundane things that need doing, it can be doing for you. It can maybe masquerade your presence. Maybe it's a digital double giving you this presentation now. Or interestingly, it's how can you use it to model behaviors or elements and how they can play out in the future. So the last trend of this, and often it's more of a design-focused one here, but it takes us back to the very start, I think, and to the many phases of growth, to that first trend on how we look, if you want, beyond a narrower view, and we take a more systemic view on what is around us. So we have spoken for years of user-centered design, and we continue to do that. We continue to put our user at the center. But we need to then, now if you want to have a layer in which we need to think of the life and the world that user inhabits, so that this becomes, if you want, a life-centered design. And this shift, and again, I think this is very much still an activity ongoing based on post-pandemic, new lockdowns may be coming into play or not, but an acceleration from a me to a we. So back in early days of lockdown, when people were coming out and showing support for their medical staff, or they were sharing in Italy, like old ladies used to do, of taking their baskets down for their shopping to be pulled up to their flats, of leaving food in there for who needed them, people to take this. So we're seeing, if you want, we all work with kind of like Venn diagrams of desirability, feasibility, and viability. And as we've looked at the desirability for end users, for its business feasibility, for how we do this, what becomes here is that move and to look at it in a wider way, so that we are taking systemic views on its impact on, on the environment, which ultimately impacts us as a society on things. And these changes, again, are paying off. If we think back to liquid people and how they're changing our way of defining ourselves, the example you see up here that comes from Dr. Martins, those are vegan boots. They're not leather. And a response, if you want, to a changing need, it also helped them not only use leather, but open up a whole new market. So they saw sales go up by quite interesting double digit. So again, here, big challenges that face us at the end is that if we are in the business of producing physical goods, it's how do we change what are kind of very complex supply chains and manufacturing processes? How do we, readapt those so that their demand is more for the purposeful products and services that we've kind of touched on in these earlier trends? And, in digital, so I think a lot of the work I've been doing in Premise is how do we change that, instead of having constant engagement and, self-service with digital services that actually respect more the time or the attention, although they're more attuned. So all this, if you want, design needs to adjust, needs to change. And we really need, I think, to broaden an understanding that then looks at entire systems, as I said, not just meeting personal. So, and I said to bring this together is redefining these three elements, understanding how we can, as I said, practice as much as possible that do no harm in the growth that we seek. And last, but very not least, in these complex times, we need collaboration and interdisciplinary scope. That's where answers come from. So more and more, as we're doing, for example, in Accenture Interactive and living this out, bringing a lot of different skill sets to the table in highly blended teams that can help respond to these many challenges that we face. And on that, I will say thank you. I believe with 2 minutes spare, and I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you very much. Perfect timing. Nice. I'm looking at me in the meanwhile, like we have a 13-second delay on what I'm seeing, but in the meanwhile, the first claps, the digital claps are coming in. People enjoyed it, so that's good. Also, some person, it's not really a question, but some person is saying that he says crypto, yes. Crypto, no, but the CBDC will be the future. I'm sharing some links on what you're doing. So I'm just waiting what's coming in. Everybody's clapping. So it's always fun if you can't see it for the speaker.
No, it is, because it is pretty bizarre to be just kind of speaking to a screen. And
there you go. Exactly that.
Slightly different from a real life experience, talking of a changing world.
Yeah. Yeah. We all, no matter how much and what that we're in technology and in future trends, it's adapting for everybody, like you said, and it's going to continue to change with everything. In the meantime, what do you think is, of course, you don't have a glass ball to predict the future, but what do you think that we're going to evolve to if you look at all these trends? To give you an example, it's a bit like people say that people don't click on banners, but they actually do click. So I know I can't represent just my country, but if I look at Belgium, the moment that lockdown and everything was a bit smoother, like we're going back to a bit to the old normal, you immediately saw people jumping in their cars, the roads getting stuck again, traffic. What do you think in general people will do? Will these trends continue, or will people go back to the old normal?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think we're living through a moment where it changes nearly from week to week. Yeah, I mean, one thing we've run here out of Italy has been an observatory where we're talking to people, but we're going back in every 2-3 months, because I think, yes, you're right. If I think back to the summer, there was a moment that our memory went quite short term.
Yeah,
and everything started going fuzzy. Did we really live through that or not? Yeah. And unfortunately, again, now I think we're going to be rediscovering some truths or not as this curve goes up, and how we're confronting it. So really definitely not a time for crystal balls, because it is unprecedented times. I think the importance, try and keep a longer view on things, you know, and look, which is very difficult, more systemically as we do on how things interconnect.
That's true. And we have
as I said, it, to me, I think I probably say it a lot of times, but when I think of crisis with a Chinese ideogram, that crisis is also the same for opportunity. So I think
that's true.
Let's look at those, and how we maybe push from that me to we.
And that's true. I don't know who said it, probably in a movie somewhere, but never waste a crisis. That's what they always say. And we have to decontaminate our crystal balls if we have them. Last question for you. You presented the trends. It's what you do on a daily, checking what is, like you said, inventing at the intersection. But what personally is for you the number one? If you have to choose of everything what you're seeing these days, what are you most excited about for the future? What is your personal preference in the development?
I think it's really the meta trend at the start, this idea of realigning fundamentals. So it's going through, it's a paradigm shift. Mm-hmm. And that can give moments of being scary, but others you're going, wow, we definitely live in interesting times. And I think, not so much predicting because you can't, but you can contribute towards inventing something. That
is true. I totally agree with that. You can look at it pessimistically or optimistically. And if you look at it optimistically, you will always see that there's a very interesting and very exciting shift happening.
Or simply realistically, this is what we have. As it's always like design, you have to work with a set of conditions. How do you turn those to the best?
Not true. Thank you very much, Ashley. Our time is up.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, things are still coming in, applauding, and people are also rating the polls. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Ciao da Milano. Have a good continuation, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers. And for the audience, thank you for watching. Thank you for responding. I see Gabriella. I wish I noticed rather these trends and raising numbers of people. Yes, you are. I wish I noticed rather these trends. Yeah, exactly. Very nice. And that's what we do. We look at the trends. We look at the way forward, what technology can do, what we can do, and how we can build, like Bettina said in the first day, like look at the opportunities, what impact you can make with whatever you're doing in your business on the current world. Now, I have to announce a bit to the audience that we're going to have a short 30-second break. Only 30 seconds, so you don't have to go anywhere. You probably won't even have time to get a coffee because our next speaker is already there. We're going to take a quick 30-second break because the technicians have to get their coffee because they hadn't had any, and they said, we want our coffee. So I said, okay, I'll give you your 30-second break. So 30 seconds, be right back. Okay, and we're back. I hope you enjoyed the break. Technicians told me they got their coffee, so they're ready to go for the last speaker. Thank you for staying, and thank you for joining in for the third day of OpenSlava, the virtual one, the last day or half day. It's a morning. I'm getting more and more pumped as the morning is proceeding. I'm not a morning person, but now we're almost at 15 past 10. So I'm awake. I'm up. Let's do this. I'm also looking at my backstage. The last speaker of the OpenSlava 2020 is ready. Super excited. Everything is okay, so I'm not going to take too much of his time. I'm just going to introduce him. his name, and I'm going to try to pronounce it right. It's Timo Fust. Do I pronounce it right?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, Timo Fust, Head of Business Innovation at Macvision Media and Design. You're an expert in CGI. You're responsible for the topic digital twins, also what you're going to talk about. They told me, but you can say if it's they have been talking about some relation you have with Game of Thrones. So you can maybe going to address that or not. People were talking about it in the previous days, so that would be really cool. Probably you're in the mood like, oh, Game of Thrones again. Here we go. And you create unique and innovative customer solutions together with all the advanced technology you have and the Macvision solutions. And today you're going to talk about this last presentation of the OpenSlava digital twins from CAD or CAD to AR and high-res images at scale. And if I look at the description, it's simply saying we're going to do that, but we're going to do it easier and faster. And that's what you're going to talk about. So let's say, have fun. The virtual floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Manik, for the introduction. And yes, Game of Thrones, this is what we always are known for. And many other Hollywood movies, we just were nominated for an Emmy for 2 series. And usually we actually start with a show reel. The issue with that is if I show you the show reel and you would love it, everybody would switch to Netflix and won't join the presentation anymore. So I have a piece of that, but in the end, so you hopefully stay during my presentation to listen to the, let's say, more, not actually boring, but compared to Game of Thrones, of course, but the more technical stuff and as a solution orientation we have for our clients. Yeah, so thanks for joining. Today I want to give you an insights on how we can solve with a digital twin and some pieces of technology a very common problem in the CPG industry, and CPG stands for consumer goods, consumer packaged goods. So in this case, what you see here on screen could be a watch, could be a toaster or a coffee machine. So whatever is produced somewhere. And this industry is extremely well organized. They have a very high time and cost pressure. They have a very efficient logistics process. And on the same time, obviously, enormously high quality demands for anything in their process chain. Yeah? Some of these companies come up with round about 10,000, 20,000 new products every year. And for each of the products, they have their own project plan, their own supply chain. And the question was, how can we provide some benefit with technology in this industry? And this is what I want to talk to you about. So obviously, we want to show you the situation to give you a little bit insights in this industry. A glimpse in our solution with 3 examples, what we have done. And then here, what's in it for you or what's in it for our clients? How can we add value? And obviously then the last piece is a little bit of Game of Thrones and all this stuff in why us. So consumers are digitally inspired many hours a day. That's obvious right now, but retail and consumer companies need almost a year to bring products to the shelf. So from the need they see to the product is in the shelf around about 12 months. The retail companies are confronted with increasing complexity in the logistics of product samples. So whenever they need a photograph or something to test, as usually the production of these products is somewhere in Asia, many of them obviously in China, you always have the issue to solve the logistics issue. And this can be very complex if you have to move hundreds of thousands of products via a container ship to Europe, which also takes some time. And there is a big point is, for example, the product packaging process. Obviously, if you produce some such products and you start production, you already need the packaging. Otherwise, you have to store somewhere in between these products. So it's the packaging is actually the key not to miss the container boat, because if you do so as a company, you have to fly all the goods and then it becomes extremely expensive. On the other hand, it's high costly content adaptations for minor product changes. So from prototyping to the real product, there can be many changes due to supplier reasons, product reasons. So even if you classically generate marketing content based on a prototype, it doesn't mean that it still works when the final product is delivered. The companies have the risk for inconsistent look and feel, also quality across the different countries where they sell it. And currently there are also limit in creative possibilities as everything is based on minor availability of these prototypes. So what did we do to solve this problem? And here's a short movie.
Digital twins, a means to optimize supply chains. A breakthrough for consumer products and retail companies. The situation, supply chains have to be sped up, but how? Today, the process of getting from product design to production to sale of the product is quite complex, timely, and fragile. It is also maxed out in terms of cost and timing. If you want to further speed things up, you have to transform them from analog to digital, from manual to
automized. So what did we do? From the CAD data, so from the data that is used to produce the product, at the manufacturer, which must not be our client, but some companies in Asia, we produce a model that is actually the visual digital twin of this product. We can, for example, instantly produce packaging and marketing materials for our clients and enable fast and consistent asset production for any application on and offline without even having seen the product. When we then utilize this digital twin to leapfrog steps in the supply chain. For example, the twin allows us to produce packaging and marketing materials early on without having to wait for the physical samples. And by that, we can reduce the supply chain, for example, at least by 9 weeks, which then gives also a faster go-to-market and reduce the risk of logistic processes via aircrafts, which obviously are more expensive. If we have done this, we also have many more possibilities. For example, we can sell products in different markets with different adaptations the products provide. We can create content for even more channels. It's not just images. We can produce animation videos or whatever. Could even be in games. There was, sorry for that one. There was a shoe in Unreal available, so in Fortnite available. So it even can be used for gamification. So we use the same CAD data that is used to manufacture a product, build a so-called CGI model from it, so computer-generated imagery, right from the start, even before it's produced. And another example, what you can do with it is we can create visuals of the product that are needed for its packaging, while photography can only start once a physical sample has been produced and shipped. That leads to an acceleration of the whole procurement process. And done so, we also can create any other marketing material, design material that is necessary in today's social media channels or interactive channels, you name it. And you see here some examples. For example, this AR/VR application to show how a certain product looks on your hand, on your foot, or wherever it is, or how a certain product fits to your living room. This all can then be handled with this digital twin. But it not can only be used in marketing. It can start in the planning phase, in the design phase, also in early decision making with some customers you have identified or potential customers. So you can show them the digital version and see how well would it fit to their needs, and they can have a much better decision of if this is a product that needs to be produced, or if there are different requirements or different likes in the look, for example, that people want. Another thing we just see in the industry, obviously to COVID, is the virtual B2B and ordering process. So right now, the actual retailers cannot go to our clients and have a look at the products there to then start their orderings, what they want to sell in the future. But this has to be digitalized, and as they cannot travel. Also something we perfectly can support. So everybody stays at home, looks digital in the product in a real-time environment. Obviously can turn around and play with a good already much earlier than any production can provide. And what we have done, and let's come a little bit more to technology. Here you see a process and all the participants. So we build a platform that is shared by the client, his suppliers, and obviously us as an additional supplier for the digital twin. And all process steps have been digitalized and allow that everybody in this process always knows where is my digital product, in which status it is, when will it be available, and how does it look like. And I want to show you these two pink examples on how something how this can happen. And this is really a glimpse into our machine room. It's not fancy made. There's no client UI or whatever. So it's really almost on code level, but you will see and get the impression how that works. So this is our data upload portal. So what you see here, we just say, okay, we want to add a new product. For example, this can be done by the supplier who owns the data. Can be in somewhere in China. He just says, okay, I want to upload my cat data, and you see here two examples. This is a so-called step file. It's some CAD format. Then we click, we want to have a high-res version of this conversion. And now the supplier, a project manager, or our client can have a look at this product. And now I have to skip because it takes like 5 minutes. I want to bore you with that one. Can have a look at this product without any knowledge of 3D software, of CAD software, without having a license, which is usually quite expensive, just by the use of his browser. And what we use for that is it's actually freeware. So it's open source software we use for that one. It's in this case based on Unreal Engine. And I'm not sure if you see it in the video in the resolution, we switch on and off certain geometries. So it's not just a static model. The user can play with it and can see if all parts are there, if there are holes somewhere, some mistakes and errors in the data. And the next step, our client can say, okay, this is the product I want, and it's the data, how I like it. And then he can approve this data and put it into our process chain. I just showed you the slide before. And with that, without having any go back and further, we also have comment function in there. And so the supplier and our client can chat, and it's all documented what should be in there. So the other thing is, after this stuff was uploaded, it usually happens that there are modifications. So from prototyping to production, usually there are many changes made in the design phase, but also in the life cycle. So when you think of, let's say, around about Christmas time, roughly the same products are sold every year, but with minor modifications. And instead of doing every marketing material again and again and again each year, we just take care of the modifications, and by that are much faster and much cheaper than the classical production. And what you see here now, this is our what we call our data hub. So every data that comes into our process ends up in this data hub. It's based on an open source database, a RungoDB. And I show you now how product modifications can be made and are instantly live in any kind of advertising material you can imagine. And I show you this on a yellow car. We just load the car. So this is a geometry of the car, and now we just create a convertible out of it. Obviously, this change doesn't make sense. In this case, it just should show you how we can work with modified changes on a certain product. So we just lift the roof, so you see some changes, check in. And as soon as we check in, the actual workflow software checks, okay, here is a modification. And in this case, on the right corner, you see a WebGL model that could be, for example, in Google search, that could be on the website as a 360 experience of the product. And on the top right corner, you see the model in Unity, could be a point of sale application, could also be something you provide via streaming to the clients. And obviously the same applies for any kind of images that you want that you have online in your e-commerce experience or wherever, in your digital asset management system. And now the first change is already there. And nobody did anything to do that. It was just the watchdog and the database just updating and running some scripts, and every modification is now there. So actually, I would also change the color because yellow car might not fit to everybody, but in this case, any instant change is done. And it's just so much less effort and so much sped up in the process that we can increase the go-to-market and the go-live to many, many weeks. So what's in it? Why does this all matter? Obviously, it increases the amount of digitalization. Digital twins of your physical products allow digitalization, automation, globalization of traditional and analog processes. You can optimize the supply chain. It leads to more efficiency and lower costs, usually for design, engineering, and for marketing and sales. And it gives you just, in this case, like 9 weeks in the process flow of the supply chain, which is a tremendous benefit compared to the usual competitors. And once that is done, it also can be used for other results or other types that are other steps in the process that are necessary. Obviously, we can pre-produce the packaging, so you never have the problem that the product is produced and you don't have packaging to ship it. You avoid any physical sample. The design of the product can be tested way before any production. And in the optimized case, it would also mean that you can marketing and sell a product even before you have produced it, and then you produce just on demand. And if it's a little bit of complex product, you also would be able to produce in a personalized way. The car industry obviously does this already, but this is also possible for any kind of other product where you have a little bit of time that you say, okay, I want to produce a product based on the real orderings in the e-commerce section. So you don't have to produce hundreds of thousands and then you recognize, oh, nobody wants to buy my product. So why us? And now we come to the dragons, and at least only a little bit dragons in this movie.
Why us? Quality at scale. Macavision develops, implements, and runs data-driven content creation solutions that create digital experiences at scale to empower our clients to leverage the potential of a digital world. And we are obsessed with visual quality, be it for retail, automotive, or the big screen. We are part of Accenture Interactive, a new breed of agency that reimagines business through experience. Part business consultancy, part creative agency, and part technology powerhouse. We stand on the shoulders of Accenture, bringing it all together to deliver tangible business outcomes for our clients.
Okay. So thanks for your time. And happy to discuss any questions you have.
All right. Thank you very much. I was looking for the dragon. I missed the dragon, I think.
Yeah.
The explosion.
Only the boom, actually, yeah. Because obviously, if we show too much Hollywood stuff, then the actual industry clients think we just do only fun stuff and not really serious business.
That's true. That's true. But I think the serious business, as you called in the beginning, that you described with the watch and everything, and even downsizing the supply chain, which might not sound super sexy, was also for me with non-tech background be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at, I can really imagine brands, even small web shops, having that product design, showing it online, and like you said in the end, selling it before it is actually manufactured, which creates less waste and less overproduction. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is also, and then sometimes we also get the feedback we cannot sell if we haven't produced it, but this is actually what happens on Kickstarter. So any Kickstarter project does nothing else. They don't have the product, you can test it, you cannot test it. And so the question is, when that this Kickstarter sense of buying also hit the regular e-commerce? Not everything, of course, but there might be certain products and certain brands where this really fits to their needs of their clients to say, okay, you can modify, you can adjust how the product should be for you, and then we produce it this way. And obviously then the client has to wait a little bit longer than the expected, let's say, Amazon one-day delivery of this.
That's true. And how do you think, because meanwhile there's a question coming in, I'll ask that from Tommy in a second. How do you think people, maybe that's a weird question, but how do you think people will react if I saw the watch that you, the smartwatch you were presenting? Would it be a bit like Instagram? Like when I see people, or when you see me, let's say that, when you see me on Instagram, I look great. And you're like, whoa, what a handsome young man with all my filters, and I'm totally digital. And then you see me in real life and you get disappointed because I don't look like I look on Instagram. Will it be the same with this product? That takes, the people are like, whoa, cool watch, how smooth it is. And then you have the real life version and people are like, oh, this is not what they sold me. Or you don't think that's a problem?
Actually, no, I don't think so. Obviously, that would be possible. Yeah, but you always have this in the e-commerce section. The companies want to provide that, because if people then order such a product and compared to the image it doesn't fit, they would send just the product back, and the actual manufacturer or the shop has then the additional costs. And the most expensive stuff in e-commerce is that people send stuff back. So the intention is actually to not like you say, put filters on it and to make it too nice, but to make it realistic. So you obviously you have to attract a person to a certain product, but you also want to avoid that then the product and the expectations do not match anymore. And with classical photo production, you are just limited. You cannot play around with it. You cannot really feel it, experience it, put it on your hand already or on your arm. In case of this watch, you cannot play around with the buttons. So in this case, it would be possible just to make a game where you just can use the watch and see how the operating system works and which feature it has, and not just rely on text information, which might not give you all the information you need and the user experience you will have with this product. So the digital production, in my opinion, just helps to better understand and really get a real impression of the product and not a over-exaggerated one.
That's a good one. And in the meantime, like I said, Tommy had a question. He says, can the tool chain automatically generate video with rotating object?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that is the shortest answer ever, but it's good. It can do it.
And it's one of the easiest one. Yeah. So this automatically generated videos, we have automatically light and camera sets for such products. And then it's for the software, it's just a virtual spin of the product. It's one of the easiest thing we can imagine.
Okay, so Tommy, I hope you had answers. In the meantime, people are, because you probably can't see it, the claps are coming in, so everybody has their digital clap. So that's lovely. People saying in German, by the way, sehr schön, vielen Dank, Timo, with claps. So also you have brought your German fans, which is really good.
Dankeschön.
And then someone says, probably on the answer you give about the rotation, someone says, what is hard then? But I have no idea what the, maybe Matej, you can clarify a bit on what you're saying, but in the meantime, people are applauding. People are saying it's awesome. So I'm just sharing this with you, that you also know as a speaker what the feedback is, because we're still virtual and you're not getting the applause.
No feedback, no audience, no faces you can look into it if what you're saying is completely abstruse and maybe useless for them. So it's a pretty nice impression. So thanks for letting me presenting this. And I hope you had any additional value. But as a presenter, it's really strange. I see you, of course, but that's obviously not the audience. And interesting times here, as a colleague before said.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, because you're the last one at a time, and Matej, I want to give everybody, because I've been promoting everybody ask questions, so I can't ignore the chat. So the last thing before I let you go is that we talked about the rotation, and you said that's the easiest. So now someone is asking, well, if that's the easiest thing to do, what you just presented, what is the absolute hardest thing?
Yeah. The more difficult is really to connect the physical product, for example, in this case of the smartwatch, with the actual software that is running on this one, because these are completely two different processes. One thing is like the geometry and the material and visualize that. This is the easy thing. But on the other hand, provide also the software and how it behaves into some kind of web experience in e-commerce shops. And I'm not sure if you have ever even seen a really good working examples. Usually from the software, you got only a video, which someone screen grabbed somehow, but it's not really the experience of the product like it would behave in real. So this is still something that has to be matched. And there are certain technologies in real-time technology that can make this, but for that you actually have to produce like a game, and the game would be you play around with the product, and you really have the same software that is running on the product. You have it just emulated in your game, which is your product presentation, and this is still something that has to be improved a lot if you want to sell products what we call IoT products, where you have some software on, it's connected to the internet, you have some user interface, and it's not just something aluminum or rubber or whatever material that you want to present.
Okay, thank you. And then, because we still have time, someone says, funny there, because you were saying I don't have an audience. People say just model an audience. You can do that. And then another person is saying, do you generate also USD-Z for iPhones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do this for the automotive industry right now, and you can search for certain cars in Google, and then you get just a 3D model of it directly in the Google search on the iPhone. So if someone wants to have a link, just message me on LinkedIn, and I send around some links, obviously.
Okay, you heard it. Connect with you on LinkedIn or other social media. Timo, thank you so much for being here, for closing off the first virtual edition of OpenSlava, ending the 3 days. I enjoyed it. The audience enjoyed it. You're getting your claps. So it was a great closing.
Closing it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks,
have a great day.
For listening.
Cheers. Bye-bye. All right, and that brings us, like I said, to the end of OpenSlava 2020. I still remember that we were discussing with the whole crew, like, are we going to do it virtual? How many days are we going to do it? And now the 3 half days or 3 days are already over. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, even though it's virtual. We had great interactions. I loved the chat. I loved hearing from you, interacting, seeing all the different topics. Some I understood, some I didn't, but that's the fourth time OpenSlava, and will be the case. But I learned so much from business, future trends, technologies. And if you want to let us know what you thought of OpenSlava 2020, like I said a couple of times, your feedback is very much appreciated and also used. So we're not just asking it because we want to ask it. So if you want to give feedback, you're going to get an email after this event for if you're in the Hopin platform. And you can fill in the form, or you can go now to openslava.sk and the form will also be there. And you can win AirPods if you fill it in. So we have different AirPods available. So if you fill it in, you'll be there. How do you say that? You draw on your name. And normally we do it physically at the end of every conference if you're a bit experienced with OpenSlava. But this year it will be the survey. You fill it in, you give feedback. We take it into account and you might win. So AirPods. Now I'm looking with my backstage crew. I also want to thank them. Okay, cool. I'm seeing claps coming in. There's no speaker, so those claps are probably for me and the crew. People are thanking me. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. There's the. I don't know if you see the crew. Do you see the crew? Can they see you?
Hi.
This is the. I hope you see them. This is the crew that has been working backstage. Real hard on the OpenSlava, making it. There you go. I now see you with 13 seconds delay on there. So if you saw them, those are the people in backstage doing everything. And if I look down or to the right, they're giving me information like with a real life conference. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. The only thing I can say is like fill in the survey. Hope to see you physically next year. But like Ashley said, we can't predict the future. There are trends. And will it be trendy to meet physical next year? I don't know what we will see. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay curious, and just know that, like we said and all the other speakers, the opportunity and the technology is there. So use it to make a positive impact, not just on your life, but also on the planet. There's so much great support out there. Connect with the speakers. They can mentor you. They can help you. Be the best that you can be. And like we say in our business, stand up to stand out. So stand up in life and business. And whatever you do, enjoy the weekend. I was Marnik. This was OpenSlava 2020. Have a great weekend and hope to see you next year. Bye-bye.